She bold, she don't break. Let's go.
I don't wait, I don't chase. If you fumble me, that's a mistake. High heels, gold chains, lip gloss popping, no time for games. I walk in, lights flash, my name buzzing like a jet crash. She cute, she slick, but I'm the storm, baby, I hit quick. They try to catch me, but I'm too fast. They throw shade, but I still laugh. Level up like every week. My whole crew fine, we don't need to speak. I'm too hot to stop, too fly to flop. If they doubt I rise, they watch me from the top. Too sharp, too slick, too strong, too thick. I run the whole scene, yeah, I'm that chick. Say it louder, she that chick? Boss moves, red nails, every step leaves glitter trails. Mind sharp, no cap, she bring the brains with all that snap. Talk sweet, I bite back, on my win stack like a money rack. Queen vibe, no pretend, she break hearts and sets the trend. Let them talk while I go shine. I'm booked, I'm blessed, I'm on God's time. Glow up, new bag, no breaks, no lag.
Just days ago, Fallon Graham celebrated another year of life. She was 39 years old, a mother of 2 children, a woman who friends described as kind and peaceful. Tonight, she lies dead in a hospital bed. 2 gunshot wounds to her abdomen ended her life before dawn could break. In 2024, nearly 150 Georgians lost their lives to domestic violence. Fallon Graham becomes another number in this growing crisis. But here's what haunts investigators tonight. What drives a husband of 22 years to pull the trigger on the woman he once promised to love and protect? What happened inside that bedroom at 121 Willis Creek Road that turned a marriage into a murder scene? Before we continue, we extend our deepest condolences to the Mency family, Fallon's friends, and all her loved ones who continue to grieve this tremendous loss. Our hearts go out to you during this difficult time as you seek justice for Fallon. Warner Robins, Georgia, sits in the heart of Houston County. This military town has built its reputation on strong family values and community bonds. Willis Creek Road cuts through one of the city's residential neighborhoods. The 100 block where Fallon lived represents a quiet area where families have chosen to make their homes. Neighbors who live in this area expressed shock and sadness when they learned what had happened. Some residents reported not hearing any unusual noises or police sirens on the night of the shooting, which added to their surprise. The community described the neighborhood as typically safe and peaceful. One neighbor mentioned often seeing Fallon and Antonio outside their home together. They knew the couple had 2 children. Now this community must face the reality that violence had entered their quiet street in the most unexpected way. Falon Graham Mency lived 39 years on this earth. She was a wife, a mother to 2 children who needed her every single day. Friends and classmates who knew her paint a picture of someone who brought peace wherever she went. Those who remember Fallon describe her as kind and mild-mannered. She avoided conflict and drama at every turn. This was a woman who chose harmony over confrontation, understanding over anger. Her gentle nature made her someone people turned to when they needed comfort. Just days before May 2nd, Fallon celebrated another birthday. She marked another year of life, surrounded by the people she loved. The celebration was recent enough that the joy still lingered in her family's memory when tragedy struck. For 22 years, she shared her life with Antonio Mency. 2 decades of marriage had woven their lives together through the ordinary moments that make up a family's history. Morning routines, evening dinners, weekend plans. The rhythm of a life built for 2. Fallon worked to support her family and maintain their home in Warner Robins. Each day brought the familiar tasks that mothers and wives know well. School schedules, household responsibilities. the countless small acts of care that hold a family together. She lived a life focused on others, putting her children's needs first, building the foundation that her family depended on. Antonio Mency was 43 years old when he pulled that trigger. 4 years older than his wife, he had shared more than 2 decades of his life with Fallon. 22 years of birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, moments that should have bound them together forever. Together, they built a family. 2 children called them mother and father. These children witnessed their parents' daily interactions, learned about love and marriage from watching Antonio and Fallon navigate life as a couple. They created memories in that house on Willis Creek Road, memories that will now be forever changed. Neighbors observed this family from the outside. They saw Antonio and Fallon together in their yard, moving through the routines of suburban life. To those watching from nearby homes, they appeared to be just another married couple, managing the responsibilities of parenthood and homeownership. But behind closed doors, something was building that neighbors could not see. Domestic violence rarely announces itself with obvious signs. It grows quietly, hidden from public view. Experts know that the most dangerous time for a victim is when they attempt to leave their abuser. The moment a victim decides to break free often triggers the final, fatal escalation that transforms threats into deadly action. May 2nd, 2025, began like any ordinary Thursday evening in Warner Robins. Families finished dinner, children completed homework, parents prepared for another workday ahead. The sun set over Willis Creek Road as it had thousands of times before. Inside the Mency home, the evening hours passed without drawing attention from anyone outside those walls. No raised voices carried through windows, no sounds of conflict reached the ears of neighbors who lived just yards away. But somewhere in those quiet hours, Fallon made a decision that would cost her everything. She decided she wanted to leave her marriage. After 22 years together, she reached the conclusion that her life with Antonio had to end. For a woman described as peaceful and conflict avoidant, this choice represented an enormous step. What drove her to this moment? What finally convinced this gentle mother that staying was no longer possible? The answers died with her in that hospital bed. As the clock moved toward midnight, tension filled the Mency bedroom. A conversation that should have remained private became the prelude to murder. Antonio learned that his wife of more than 2 decades wanted out. The woman who had shared his life, raised his children, built a home with him, wanted to walk away. 3 doors down, Howard Hall settled into his living room for another quiet evening. He routinely stayed awake until 12:30, a habit that made him familiar with the sounds at his neighborhood after dark. Cars passing by, dogs barking in the distance, the occasional late-night conversation. He knew what normal sounded like on Willis Creek Road. That night, normal surrounded him. No unusual sounds reached his ears. No warning signs suggested that violence was building just houses away from where he sat. The deadly confrontation between Fallon and Antonio unfolded in complete silence, hidden from the very neighbor who might have heard it happening. At 12:15 in the morning, someone made the call that would bring this hidden tragedy into the light. The emergency dispatcher received urgent words that cut through the quiet night. Domestic dispute with shots fired. Those 5 words launched a response that would be too late to save Fallon's life. Warner Robins Police Department units raced through empty streets toward Willis Creek Road. Red and blue lights pierced the darkness as officers approached the house where 2 lives had just changed forever. The peaceful neighborhood Howard Hall knew so well, suddenly filled with the chaos of emergency response. Officers entered the residence and discovered a scene that would haunt them for years to come. They found both the victim and the suspect inside the home. Fallon lay wounded with 2 gunshot wounds to her abdomen. Antonio remained on the scene, the weapon, the evidence, the horrible reality of what had just occurred. Emergency medical personnel worked frantically to stabilize Fallon's condition. 2 bullets had torn through her body, causing internal damage that threatened her life with every passing second. Paramedics loaded her into an ambulance for the desperate race to the local hospital. As Fallon fought for her life in the back of that ambulance, Antonio faced the beginning of his journey through the justice system. Officers placed him in custody at the scene, ending his freedom in the same moment his actions had ended his wife's future. The Warner Robins Police Department's Criminal Investigation Unit arrived to begin the methodical process of documenting a murder scene. Every piece of evidence needed to be photographed, measured, collected. The Identification Crime Scene Unit joined them, bringing specialized equipment to capture details that would later be presented in court. Inside that house, investigators found the story written in blood and gunpowder residue. The bedroom where Fallon and Antonio had once shared intimate conversations now contained the physical evidence of how their marriage had ended in violence. At the hospital, medical teams worked to repair the damage those 2 bullets had caused. Fallon's body had already endured too much trauma. Despite every effort to save her life, the injuries proved too severe. Falon Graham Mency died in that hospital room, leaving behind 2 children who would never see their mother again. The phone call came back to investigators. Fallon was gone. What had begun as a domestic violence case was now officially a homicide. Antonio would face charges that reflected this new reality. Prosecutors reviewed the evidence and made their decision about how to proceed. Antonio Mency was charged with felony murder, the most serious charge possible under Georgia law. His actions in that bedroom had crossed the line from domestic violence into capital crime. Additional charges followed: aggravated assault, weapons violations, each charge representing a different aspect of the violence he had unleashed that night. The legal system would now determine his punishment for destroying a family and ending a life. Antonio was held without bond, a decision that reflected both the severity of his crimes and the risk he might pose to others. No amount of money could secure his release while he awaited trial. He would remain in custody as the legal process moved forward, ensuring he could not harm anyone else while seeking justice for Fallon. In the days following Fallon's murder, Willis Creek Road would never feel the same to those who called it home. Rakimian Harris had lived in this neighborhood for 14 years. He knew every house, every family, every routine that made this place feel safe. Now he faced the reality that domestic violence had invaded the community he trusted. Howard Hall's evening routine in his living room took on new meaning. The man who had sat awake until 12:30 that night, hearing nothing unusual, now questioned everything he thought he knew about safety. His perception of the neighborhood changed forever. How do you feel secure when murder can happen in complete silence just 3 doors away? The community rallied around Fallon's memory and her surviving children. Vigils were planned to honor a life cut short by violence. Friends and neighbors organized memorial services to celebrate the kind, gentle woman they had known. These gatherings served both as tribute to Fallon and as a way for the community to process their collective trauma. A GoFundMe campaign was launched to help cover funeral expenses for the family. Donations poured in from people who wanted to do something, anything, to help ease the financial burden on Fallon's loved ones during their time of grief. The community's generosity reflected their shock at losing someone so unexpectedly. The impact of this violence rippled through every conversation on every street corner. Parents held their children closer. Spouses had difficult conversations about safety and warning signs. The peaceful neighborhood that residents had chosen for its security now grappled with the reality that domestic violence respects no boundaries. Fallon's body was sent to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation crime lab by the Houston County coroner. An autopsy would be performed to determine the exact circumstances of her death. Medical examiners would document every injury, analyze every piece of physical evidence, and provide the official cause of death that would be presented in court. The examination process would take time, days or weeks to complete the thorough analysis required for a murder case. Each finding would be documented with scientific precision, creating an official record of how Antonio's actions had ended his wife's life. Detective Juan Garcia became the lead investigator responsible for building the case against Antonio. His phone number was released to the public, encouraging anyone with information about the couple or the events leading up to the shooting to come forward. Every detail, no matter how small, could prove crucial in understanding what happened that night. Macon Regional Crime Stoppers joined the effort to gather information from the community. They provided an anonymous way for people to share what they knew without fear of retribution. Tips and leads would be followed up by investigators working to build the strongest possible case for prosecution. The investigation continued around the clock. Evidence from the crime scene was analyzed, witness statements were collected, and the timeline of events was reconstructed piece by piece. Each element of the case needed to be thoroughly documented to ensure justice for Fallon and accountability for Antonio. Fallon's death became part of a much larger crisis facing Georgia. In 2024, nearly 150 people lost their lives to domestic violence across the state. Each number represented a family destroyed, children left without parents, communities forced to confront the reality of intimate partner violence. These statistics reveal a pattern that experts have studied for decades. Domestic violence escalates over time, often reaching its most dangerous point when the victim attempts to leave the relationship. The decision to end an abusive marriage can trigger the final, fatal response from an abuser who refuses to let go. Warning signs often exist long before violence turns deadly, but they can be difficult for friends and family to recognize. Isolation, controlling behavior, threats, and jealousy may seem like relationship problems rather than precursors to murder. By the time the danger becomes obvious, it may be too late to intervene. Warner Robins Police Chief John Wagner issued a statement expressing the department's commitment to seeking justice for Fallon. He emphasized the seriousness with which his officers approach domestic violence cases, understanding that today's verbal argument could become tomorrow's homicide without proper intervention and support. Domestic violence has become a public health crisis that demands coordinated response from law enforcement, social services, healthcare providers, and communities. The death of someone like Fallon, a kind, peaceful mother who avoided conflict, demonstrates that no one is immune from becoming a victim of intimate partner violence when they try to escape an unsafe relationship.